Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Green. My pronouns are he, him. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast.
My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast, a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. My pronouns are he, him, and I am also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. I'm going to salute myself today.
Yeah, do it, man.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are a member. And we have movies to talk about today, as we always do. But before I get to those two movies, I want to mention that over on our Patreon this week, because it is, of course, Noirvember, we are talking about film noir, more specifically the 1946 film Gilda, starring Rita Hayworth. And we had a really fun discussion. So if you're a patron, check that out. And if you're not a patron, please consider joining. For $5 a month, you get access to weekly bonus episodes. And you also get to vote in monthly polls, which is pretty cool. We'll be having one pretty soon that you would get to vote in. And if you... What was I going to say? Anyway, so you should consider becoming a patron if you're not. And also, I'll take this opportunity to shout out our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
All right, now on to this week's movies. So we have two, as I mentioned. We are going to be talking about Blink Twice, the thriller directed by Zoe Kravitz, and we are going to be talking about My Old Ass, the comedy
about a donkey who's very old.
About a donkey, yes, starring Aubrey Plaza.
That would be amazing if there was a movie about a donkey called My Old Ass. Oh.
I could see it still working. I could see this being a very, very deadpan, sarcastic donkey.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that second. So first, we're going to talk about Blink Twice, which I mentioned is directed. It's written and directed by Zoe Kravitz, co-written by E.T. Feigenbaum. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that name correctly.
Sorry, when you said E.T., I was just like, E.T.?
Yes.
Like E.T., E.T.?
E.T. wrote this.
E.T. phoned home.
He phoned in this screenplay, I guess. So.
And so this has quite the cast. It's Naomi Ackie, Channing Tatum, Aaliyah Shawkat, Christian Slater, Simon Rex, Adria Arona, Haley Joel Osment, Liz Carabell, Levin Hawke, True Mullen, Gina Davis, and Kyle MacLachlan. So
it is a big cast.
It is, yes. And we'll do our IMDb summary first. When tech billionaire Slater King meets cocktail waitress Frida at his fundraising gala, he invites her to join him and his friends on a dream vacation on his private island. As strange things start to happen, Frida questions her reality. This is a very strangely written plot summary because the main character of this movie is Frida. And the plot summary is written as if it's from Slater, Channing Tatum's perspective. It's very odd. Anyway, yeah, so Frida is a cocktail waitress and she's working this event. She mentions to her friend Aaliyah Shawkat that she finds him attractive. We also find out in the movie that he's been in some hot water for some inappropriate behavior, parties where he's been inappropriate. It seems like sexual harassment in the workplace. I don't know exactly what other stuff that he's done, but he's done the apology tour and, supposedly trying to make up for it by stepping aside as CEO from his company, but still being involved. And so that's kind of like the setup. They meet, she ends up falling over it. There's like an after party after the cocktail party, and she falls over and like cuts her hand, and he helps her up. And then, they hang out, and he invites her and some of the others back to this private island. And that's where all the events from there transpire. It's a lot of like partying and drugs and, kind of weird stuff where like they show up and there's stuff already in their, sizes ready for them. And they're wearing like these white gowns and these black gowns. Like they're all wearing the same color stuff. And Christian Slater is snapping Polaroids of their partying and debauchery. And Gina Davis is there too as some type of, I guess she's the Channing Tatum's assistant.
She's his sister.
Oh, his sister. Totally missed that.
I'm pretty sure that's his sister, but I could be wrong. Maybe she's the assistant sister, or maybe you're right. Maybe it is the assistant. I thought it was his sister.
I didn't realize that could have been his sister. Anyway, so she's there, and then there's just weird stuff starts happening where Frida's like feels like she's losing time, and one of the
She is the assistant, by the way. I'm sorry, you were right.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why I thought it was his sister.
Well, he does mention his sister.
Oh, maybe
so
that's
like
why.
later on, he mentions that him and his sister were abused in some way. In the way that kind of you find that abusers will bring up being abused by someone else to kind of engender like sympathy from someone that they are abusing. I mean, I although I did feel like it was like there wasn't really much there other than kind of like a throwaway line. But so Frida is just feeling like she's missing time, and all of them are kind of like noticing bruises and things on themselves that they don't remember. And there's a woman there who is on the staff, and she's drinking. There's these snakes all around the island that they keep killing. And you find out that she's drinking the snake's venom, and then she gives it to Frida, and Frida drinks it, and then she starts to remember all the stuff that's been happening. And so you find out that they've been drugging the women so that they don't remember what's going on, and then they're abusing them sexually and physically, and they're not remembering all of this. So then, Frida realizes what's going on. She starts getting the others to drink the venom and figure out what's going on. And then that leads to, she teams up with Sarah, who's one of the other people there. Her friend Jess gets killed because she also remembers what's going on. And so Frida teams up with Sarah, and the two of them kind of like hatch a plot to get the other women to remember and to kind of turn the tables on them. And they eventually do, and end up killing killing pretty much all of them except for Channing Tatum, who they end up taking, or Frida ends up taking him. And then the end of the movie is that you find out that she has been drugging him now, and she's now CEO of the company and
his wife,
and has made him her puppet. So yeah. Anyway. It sounds like Megan has some opinions about this movie, as we talked about off mic. So I feel like let's just launch right into it, unless you feel like there's anything missing from that kind of rambling plot summary.
No, I don't actually think it was that rambling. I mean, there's a lot that's happening, and kind of, the fact that Frida doesn't, like you said, she's missing time. She doesn't really know what's happening through a lot of it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's meandering in the sense that it's trying to throw you off. So I don't actually think your description is meandering, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I feel bad going first because I didn't like this at all. I like this cast. I have always liked Channing Tatum. I think he's very charismatic, and I think he's a really smart choice to cast. Reading the production notes, Zoe Kravitz said that she wanted someone who, like Channing Tatum, who was very charismatic, and his public persona, or not his public persona, but his the roles he had chosen was cast in, like, the Magic Mike films that are catered to female pleasure. It would be kind of this inversion of that, because he is, such a monster who is abusing women. And I get why she cast him, because, she was saying that you'd have to cast someone who is just so friendly and charming and so, disarming that you would just be like, sure, I'll go with you to your,
Private
secret
island.
island.
Yeah.
Right. And so I love him as an actor. I love Alia Shawkat. I've always loved her. She's great. I think she's underutilized here, but I love her. I really like Adria Arjona here. I like her. She's great in Andor. She's great in a lot of other roles.
Mhm.
So I
She
think
is.
I think most of the cast, or those three are my favorites here. But yeah, I think the cast overall is a good cast. I think for me, the problem is in the writing. If you're gonna do a movie that is critiquing systems of power, like power dynamics, systems of abuse, which I'm all for. I love movies that are exploring those issues. If you're gonna do that and critique, elitism and classism and, kind of eat the rich and all of that, and how terrible can rich people be, and this is, the pinnacle of abhorrent abusive behavior. I feel like, and so much to the point that, they're drugging women with this drug where they're using this perfume that
Yeah.
is what's making them forget. And then the snake
Mhm.
venom is the antidote. Like, I just feel like if you're going that route and it has kind of this fantastical element to it, that's totally fine, of course. But I feel like for me, it needed much more depth. It needed much more critique. It needed much more to it. And for me, it doesn't feel very deep at all. To me, it's very surface level. And that's okay. Like, not everything has to be super, super deep. But there was something about this that I just found extremely off-putting, that it didn't feel like it was actually critiquing those things. For me, it felt like it was, and I know this isn't the case because I'm sure Zoe Kravitz and the other people who worked on this had the best of intentions, but to me it felt like it was using rape and sexual assault as kind of just a way to have like this twist, and there was something about it that just did not work for me. And I've been wrestling with it, and I'm like, why didn't I like this? Why didn't it work for me? Excuse me. And I've read some other reviews that also were talking about how there isn't enough of a race intersection with the critique, even though Zoe Kravitz, of course, is a Black woman, and Naomi Ackie is a Black woman who's the lead, and she wrote the character as the protagonist as being Black because she wanted to focus on her experience as a Black woman. So, or from that lens. So whenever you have a character, a protagonist who's Black, of course, it changes the racial dynamics just inherently. But reading that there isn't really this intersectionality in its approach of the critique of abuses of power when it comes to differences as far as how Black women face oppression and rape and violence as opposed to other women. I just think it's missing a lot of nuance here. And yeah, it really, really bothered me. And I think there were parts of it that I could have been okay with, but then that ending for me just was the absolute death knell. And I was like, okay, so she is, this poor woman, Frida. Not only has she lost her friend, not only has she been raped, not only has she been abused, not only are all of her memories erased, and then she gets them all back. But then on top of it, she finds out she's been there before looking at a Polaroid, and and then she's going to drug Channing Tatum to do the same exact thing, and just so she can girl boss her way to the top. Like, it just was gross. It just was gross. It pissed me off, and it just rang hollow. And I just, none of it worked for me. So yeah, it just did not work for me.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, it was too bad.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I actually really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I thought Naomi Ackie was great. her performance is great, but also she has such a expressive face, and I love how much kind of like looking like into her eyes, especially early in the movie. I thought the cast was great. I liked that the movie, I think, does a good job of playing with time where you're not sure how long they're there for. It's definitely multiple days, and it seems like it's a lot of days that they're just partying and having fun, and no one is suspecting that there's anything wrong, even though you as the viewer know that something is too good to be true about this.
The
But I
sound design
respect,
tips it off too.
yeah, but I respect that the movie actually like revels in that and lets them just like be there for a few days where it just seems like everything is hunky dory, and I
Mhm.
like that it then kind of starts dropping clues with like the snake venom and starting to realize the lost time. And I love that she teams up with Adria Aronia, uh because her character Sarah is kind of they kind of portray her a little bit as like a little bit aloof, like, oh, she's one of those people that's been on those like reality survivor shows, and so people kind of look at her a kind of way, but you find out that she's very smart and cunning and is a very good kind of teammate to Frida. And once she realizes what's going on, and then they just start kind of like working together to kind of tear this whole thing down. So I
Which I
enjoyed,
liked that part. That part
yeah,
is a good part.
yeah, I liked their camaraderie. And also I just thought it's a bonkers idea to have them drinking snake venom and having that be a whole thing. Like totally bonkers.
It is. It all. Sorry, keep going. I have a thought
No,
about
no, it's
that.
okay. No, please say what you're thinking.
I know this is going to sound weird because Zoe Kravitz is a black woman, but that felt super racist to me, like against like Mexicans, because all of the staff members are Mexican and they're speaking Spanish. They don't speak English. And you see one of the women and she just keeps saying what sounds like Red Rabbit, and you find out she is saying Red Rabbit because of
Mhm.
her Frida's nails, her nail polish.
Right.
But she's it just there's something that just felt again icky to me about it. I'm like, wait, why are all of the like the staff here looking unhinged? Anyway, it just
Mhm.
so something about the snake venom just kind of perpetuated that kind of weird, I don't know, this kind of weird othering stereotype that yeah, anyway.
I
Maybe
think I
it
was
just
just
was
accessing
bonkers.
yeah, I think I was just accessing this movie at a more like visceral level of its kind of debaucherous, sweaty vibes that it had going on. And
I think so.
yeah, and also Gina Davis being in on all of it and kind of doing all the stuff to enable all of this. I love Gina Davis, and I think it's definitely very intentional to have Gina Davis, who is such
Yes.
a renowned feminist and
Mhm.
someone who there's literally the Gina Davis Center for Feminist Media
Mhm.
is an actual thing that exists. And so I just thought that was brilliant to have her in this and have her playing this type of role. And she's great. I loved her in this.
She is great.
So yeah, I don't know. It was working for me. I was enjoying this, and I did love the deliciousness of the ending of her now drugging Channing Tatum and taking over his empire. But it is messed up to think that she had been there before. That was kind of a shocking reveal to me once we
Yeah.
kind of put together that the red rabbit was referring to her nails because she had been there before. And yikes, that is it also you're thinking like how long were they doing this before they would like send a crop of people back home in a daze, or like how often was this happening, or how many people were getting murdered because they were remembering that those are the kind of like messed up things that you think about, once you kind of come down from a movie like this. But yeah, I'm bummed it didn't work for you, Megan. I thought it would at least be fun to discuss because it is the kind of movie that it makes some pretty bold choices, and whether they work or not, you know, you might have strong feelings either way. which apparently we both did.
Yeah, no, I definitely have strong feelings.
Dave, you only caught a little bit of this. Did we deter you from watching the rest of it now that you
Or
kind of
spoiler
know
piece you into it.
Yeah.
Well, it ever since I first saw the trailer, whenever that was 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I was like, oh, this sounds intriguing to me. It sounds less intriguing to me that I know that Zoe Kravitz wrote and directed it, but also I think that the concept still I find very intriguing. The whole idea that you would have this tech bro billionaire asshole go on his apology tour, but the whole thing is a sham, just so he can lure more women to his island.
Mhm.
That's absolutely wacky in a good way. The premise, not the actual doing of it.
Mhm.
So it's that all sounds interesting to me. Although there is just a whole lot of ick attached to it, the way you are both describing it. So I don't know. But the moment I saw Christian Slater appear on screen, I was like, well, they're all bad guys.
Of course. Yes.
I think I've seen Christian Slater as an adult play a good person like twice. So yeah, that's just, I don't know. Yeah. Oh, and then of course I don't know if Haley Joel Osment goes to the island with them, but seeing him.
He sure does.
Yeah,
Yes, he
because I'm just
does.
like, he played, the precocious, sweet kid in all those movies, but as an adult, he kind of always plays a douche.
He
So
does. Yeah, he likes to lampoon his kind of younger years
Yeah.
as playing the kind of precocious kid, which I
Yeah.
appreciate. I'm glad that he has a sense of humor and is trying to kind of forge a new path as an asshole, maybe a Christian Slater in training, so to speak.
yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I have 48 hours to watch it. Fucking Apple. Ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't being lazy. The reason I couldn't watch this is I rented it on Apple TV, and then it was like, there's a playback error. And that happened for about 4 hours today. And I was like, okay. So then I went to see if it was available anywhere else, and it's available for the same price on Prime. And I was like, I'm just not going to rent it twice. I don't even know if I would like this movie. So, yeah. So I'm going to watch it tomorrow.
Okay.
And then I'll tell you if it...
You'll text us and let us know
Yeah.
where you come down.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is, I mean, I'm curious if you get the same vibes, because like watching it, I got so many vibes like Don't Worry, Darling, The Menu, trying to think what else. There were others that now I can't think of, which I think is interesting because Zoe Kravitz compared it to Lord of the Flies meets The Matrix, which I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
I don't get those vibes from either of the descriptions
I did not
you
at
both
all.
gave.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think that I do either.
Yeah.
I mean, Lord of the Flies, that doesn't
The fact that they were
sense.
isolated.
Oh, please.
I know. I was like,
they're on an
that's a stretch."
island with running water and all kinds of amenities.
Right. I was like, yeah.
Enough water for fucking fountains. There's this big wall of water fountain on one of the buildings, and okay, they're not really roughing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like a better comparison would have been sort of The Most Dangerous Game, in the sense that they're being hunted, but it's almost like they then don't know they're being hunted at night. Like, so they like,
oh, right.
their
With the
memories are
chasing them
wiped.
and stuff.
Yeah. And that that a rich person is like hunting people. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Also, before we move on, I just wanted to remark how funny it is that Channing Tatum's character his name is Slater, or his first name is Slater, and Christian
Yes.
Slater is in this, and I just kept thinking about that the entire time. We have a main character named Slater who's not played by Christian Slater, who does play a character on Archer named Slater.
All right, my head's starting to throb. I don't.
There's too many Slaters.
Yeah.
All I could think of was Slater Kinney.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I'm glad I wasn't alone.
Okay. Do we have anything else to say about Blink Twice?
I don't think so.
So then let's move on to a movie that we have all seen, My Old Ass. It's written and directed by Megan Park. It stars Maisie Stella, Aubrey Plaza, and yeah, that's and Maria Dizia, who I just keep seeing in everything. I feel like I'm just watching a million things and she just keeps popping up. She plays the mom in this.
She does pop up in a lot of places.
Yeah. So what's our IMDb summary here? So we've got a mushroom trip brings free-spirited Elliot face to face with her 39-year-old self. But when Elliot's old ass delivers warnings to her younger self, Elliot realizes she has to rethink everything about her family, life, and love. Yeah.
And it's not about a donkey.
It is not about a donkey.
No donkeys.
Yes. An old ass is a double entendre, as we find out in the movie. Dave mentioned that off mic. He was not expecting.
Yeah, I just thought it was like, your old ass. But nope.
Also about her old ass.
Yes.
And wanting to touch her own ass at 39 years old. Yeah. So, okay. So yeah, so we meet Elliot early in the movie, and she is sweet talking this girl who works at a coffee shop that they go to, and she ends up hooking up with her. It's her birthday. They're gonna go take some mushrooms, and
sorry, that just sounds funny the way you said. They're gonna take some mushrooms.
Yeah, they're gonna take some mushrooms, go camping on this island. They live in a very kind of small town. Did they ever say where it is? I mean, it's Pacific Northwest, clearly.
No, it's Canada.
It's Lake Muskoka.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Canada, yeah.
Gotcha. So and she's getting ready to go to college in Toronto in just a couple of weeks. So we kind of got that end of summer thing going on. Elliot feels like she's kind of got to party and have a good time, and she's really excited to go to the city. And so she does the mushrooms. She meets her older self, Aubrey Plaza. They have a good time talking and hanging out. And then what happens? She puts Aubrey Plaza puts her phone number in Maisie Stella's phone, and they somehow through time are able to talk and text, and they become really close and talk a lot. And there's some advice that Aubrey Plaza dispenses to her younger self. One of the major ones being avoid anyone named Chad. Any guys named Chad.
Which is just good advice for anyone.
Yeah. You would think so too. And of course, her family has a cranberry farm, and a guy named Chad had just started working there who's very clearly trying to be charming to her and to get to know her, and she is trying her best to avoid him per her older self's advice. But she's also trying to follow her older self's advice of spending more time with her family and connecting with them more one-on-one, her younger brothers, who are very different from her mother, who, older Elliot is like, you got to spend more time with mom. And doesn't exactly say why, but seems to intimate that possibly their mother isn't dead in the future, but may have dementia or something. So they're not able to spend the same type of quality time. And yeah, I mean, the movie is just about her like rounding out the rest of the summer, trying to follow some of this advice, trying to stay away from Chad despite her best efforts, and trying to hit up her older self for advice. And then there's a point in the movie where her older self disappears and she can't get a hold of her for a while. So she's kind of spiraling out, not sure what to do, and then goes and hooks up with Chad. And then that's when her older self gets back in touch. And they have a very kind of tearful reunion at the end of the movie where you find out that Aubrey Plaza has done a bunch of edibles or something like that to somehow recreate the experience so that she could go back and talk to her younger self. And you find out that the reason why she said to stay away from Chad is not because he was bad, but because he dies. And so falling in love with him is going to be extremely painful. And so she was trying to save herself some heartbreak. And so they have a good moment then. Older Elliot gets to hug Chad, has a very emotional moment, and then they kind of part ways. And then there's kind of like a last voicemail that her older self leaves her before she kind of goes off and does her thing. What am I missing?
I think you hit everything. And Dave has a case of the giggles.
The Saoirse Ronan obsession for her youngest brother.
Oh,
I mean-
that's
Oh,
true.
that's adorable.
It is cute. He's made a wall of Saoirse Ronan in her bedroom. He's already
Different
started moving.
faces.
Yeah, he's already moved in the day before she's supposed to move out, and she says something like, "How am I going to sleep? I can't sleep in here with this wall of Saoirse Ronan."
Like Saoirse Ronan like staring at you.
Yeah, yeah. It's charming. It's silly and charming, I think, anyway. But I'm curious to hear what you both think. Dave, what did you think of My Old Ass?
Oh, I just love this. So,
Eee.
end of story.
That's good.
I mean, this you have to know.
Okay, show over.
Yeah, you have to know that this is the kind of movie. Anybody who's listening to this has to know that if a movie like this is done well, it's my movie. It's my kind of movie.
Mhm.
You know, the sort of raw, visceral emotion, the sort of like weird, not weird. It's not weird for an 18-year-old, but the like the kind of wistful longing for your future, you know. And I don't know. I'm kind of hot and cold on Aubrey Plaza, but I think she's really good and very understated here. I know Megan just made a face, and I mean
I made a shocked
capital,
face.
all caps, face,
Like a whiplash, like
Like what do you mean?
record scratch.
I think that her kind of halted way of speaking gets to me sometimes because it's like, can you just not be like sarcastic for a moment? So, but she's very earnest here, and it doesn't bother me all the time when she does that. I think lots of times it's actually quite good, but every once in a while it's like, okay. Yeah, I dug the main kid. I know that she was on Nashville, but I don't know if I've ever seen her in anything else.
This is her film debut.
I've seen one episode of Nashville, and I was like, nope, never again. So it was called Nashville. I should have known. And I really like the it's not the closing scene, but it's not even the penultimate scene. Hate that word. When the two of them get together to talk about why she can't be around Chad, and when old ass meets Chad, the way she says "nice to meet you too" just broke my heart. You know.
Yeah.
So
And that long lingering hug that
yeah,
she gives him, and just seeing that tear roll down her cheek while she's hugging him.
yeah. I'm getting all teary thinking about it now.
Yeah, got me choked up.
Yeah.
That scene broke me. It was so sad.
I know, it's just such a heartbreaking, you
I
know.
Did you call it early in the movie that it was going to be that he died? Because I did fairly early. I kept thinking when I kept seeing him and he wasn't doing anything bad, my thought was the twist will be that he is a really good person. It's just that he dies.
You know what? I did not think about it at all. I was like so swept up in what was going on. I was just kind of like, yeah, don't talk to Chad. You're supposed to not talk to Chad. Come on.
You're like, listen to Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah, it's like she knows like there's a reason. It's not like she's going to be like, hey, younger self, don't have great sex throughout your university years, you know, so assuming it is. So I do like the way she says before they have sex, she's like, I've never had dick sex before. That really, I was like, yeah, I can see how that might be a little, you know, hey. Anyway, everybody has not had dick sex before at least once. So,
No, but it was funny. But you are right that it's a funny way of wording it because most people say, like, queer people say, like, penetrative sex, so like in that way, but like, or penetrative with a penis, but like, yeah, to say dick sex, it was very funny.
Oh, and when she tells her friend Ro that she's like into a guy, and she's like, I always thought I was, you know, I can't remember whether she says gay or queer or whatever she says, but she's like, but am I bi? Am I poly? I don't know. And then Ro like is just kind of like, well, you know, I mean, she says, but now you're just this is like straight white chick. And she's like, what? Oh, that's the most hurtful thing you've ever said. And of course it's a joke, but it's really funny in the moment. Yeah. And I liked her parents and her dad's super thick Canadian accent. I mean, he says like sorry and tomorrow and all of that stuff. And it's just like, I don't know who you are, pal, but I want you in every movie now. So, but I'm also glad that we didn't get to see, for some reason, even though there were only like 7 minutes in the movie left after the big reveal that Chad's going to die, I was like, I hope we don't see him die on screen.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
be the-
I was like, the movie is not that cruel.
That'd be terrible.
No. Yeah. I mean, but obviously, old ass can't tell young ass. Sorry, that sounds so fucking stupid. Old Elliot can't tell young Elliot when or how it happens, because that would just be fucked
Even
up.
more devastating.
Even more
Yeah.
devastating, yeah. It would be kind of like Arrival in that way, which I learned recently that the guy who wrote Arrival wrote one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, which is bizarre to me. Anyway, living with that knowledge, there is the conundrum. I mean, that is part of what Arrival is about, living with the knowledge that someone you love is going to, like, exactly when they're going to die. And this is a little maybe more torturous. I don't know. Well, if you knew you had until May 17th, 2031, I mean, what's, okay. And also it's like, I know you think you can maybe you can save him, but you can't. I'm like wondering, what does he die of? I'm going to go with terminal illness, but.
Oh, I was thinking like car accident or something that was just, there was no way that it was going to be stoppable.
Like walked in front of a bus accidentally or something like that?
Yeah, but I don't know. I think, I think not knowing is good, as you mentioned. It's not knowing when it's going to happen, but
it sounds like it was sudden, though, the way she describes it. Mm-hmm. So, which is makes me sad for Chad. It rhymes. This is why you shouldn't name people Chad. 1, because it's a terrible name. And 2, because it rhymes with sad, bad, mad, glad. It's just like, oh, Chad, you're so sad today. Chad, are you glad that you had a latte today, Chad?
Yeah. He lies when he cries. Right?
That's right. Joe lies when he cries. Joe lies. Oh. Good way to. I like the way you pulled that one out.
Thank you.
So that's how I feel about My Old Ass. I don't know that it's particularly deep, because and like you said about Blink Twice, movies don't necessarily need to have deep inner meaning or things like that. I think this is just like a really good comedy / drama written in an earnest way without taking itself too seriously, and really solid performances and direction. So there you go.
Yeah.
Kind of sums it up there.
Yeah, very effectively. What about you, Megan?
Oh, I loved this too. I thought this was an absolute delight. Yeah, I do like Aubrey Plaza in all things. So I was very excited for it. No, I can understand why you don't, though. I can see her, delivery and sarcasm, her, kind of her sardonic nature might not work constantly. But for me, it works. So, and I have seen her give more emotional performances. And
Emily
so
the Criminal.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Great
yeah,
movie.
I do not like that film at all, but she is phenomenal in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she gives a fantastic performance in that. So I know she's got the range to do earnest and emotional and tender moments. So I was very excited for this, and I was super excited because Aubrey Plaza is queer, Maisie
True.
Stella is queer. This is a queer character, so I was pumped right from the outset. And I love this kind of fantasy sci-fi premise of kind of sort of pseudo time travel, and I also kind of love that you never quite until the end, you never quite know if she's hallucinating or not, because it kind of seems like she might be. And then when she can't see older Elliot anymore, it's like, oh, well, maybe she stopped hallucinating. But nope, then she reappears, and then obviously she meets Chad. And I love when she's like, you can see her. And he's like, am I not supposed to be able to?
I also,
it was so cute.
I love the way he doesn't think that it's weird that she would ask that. He's just he's just like, should I not see her?
It's just so sweet. Like, it's just so like innocently sweet. So I loved that. I loved their rapport. I thought they had a really lovely chemistry in their kind of banter and friendship. The two Elliots, I
Mhm.
mean.
Yes.
I really liked them tremendously. I love because they don't look alike, I love how they played that off too. She's like, well, you don't even look like me. You have a gap in your teeth and I don't. And Aubrey Plaza Elliot is like, yeah, wear your retainer. And that's like so cute. And like, and I love how she's like at the end, like, make sure you wear your retainer and moisturize. Like she's giving her like, kind of superficial advice, but then she's also giving her much more heartfelt advice. And Dave, you said that you weren't sure how deep this is, and you're right. It's not maybe super deep, but I really love the issues it's touching on in the
Mhm.
sense
For
of
sure.
spending more time with family, like you said, Evan, but also like living in the moment, which is something that
Mhm.
younger Elliot really imparts on older Elliot.
Yes.
Like, if you never were young and you didn't take chances, you'd never live, you'd never do anything, you'd never leave your house. And I kind of love that. If you're always just in your head worrying, you'll never do anything. So I kind of love that they both teach each other a lesson,
Yeah, exactly.
which is great. But it doesn't feel in this kind of like after school special kind of way. It just feels like this
No.
very genuine, sweet, well earned way. But yeah, and I love Elliot's rapport with her friends. I kind of wish we could have gotten to see that more. I like how she's connecting with her brothers more. I absolutely adore the scene that you talked about, Dave. That just like destroyed me. The scene about, that he died. She's telling her about Chad dying, and then she meets Chad. The other scene that kind of destroyed me too was the scene with her mom, and her mom is talking about holding her as a baby and rocking her to sleep, and how
Yeah.
she like taught her, or like she said crib and like, or bed or whatever it was. And so she didn't need to be rocked to sleep anymore. And she's like, it was great. You were independent, but it also made me really sad. And that's how I feel now that you're going off to college. And I just thought that was so like, oh my God, that's so nice. Like, what a nice
Mhm.
parent. What a lovely moment. So it was just really sweet. It was really, really lovely. And so that made me cry a lot. The scene with Chad at the end where Aubrey Plaza meets him, that made me cry uncontrollably. Then the very, very ending with the voicemail made me cry. So it was a lot of crying. But this is just an absolutely lovely movie. I love the scenes of the lake. I love the camping. I love the vibe of this. I love the performances. I loved all of it. It was great.
And this is where Evan tells us he hated it.
Not at all.
Oh, no.
Not at all. No, I loved this movie too. It was so charming and funny and sweet and poignant, I think, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the coming of age aspects of it. But as you mentioned, Megan, they older self and younger self both teach each other important lessons. And I think that really comes together at the end with that kind of final voicemail, but also the scene that we keep talking about where they're talking and then, Chad comes into the scene. I think they make a lot of really great points to each other. And I think both younger and older Elliot performances are great. I like that scene you were mentioning, Dave, with the friend where she is kind of talking out her sexuality, like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I guess I am bi. And then I did laugh when the friend said, I don't think any less of you for being straight. I thought that was very funny.
That was what
And
it
a great
was. Yeah.
kind of inversion of the trope of people coming out and having their family say, well, I don't think any less of you, or I still love you even though you're gay. And so I thought that was a very funny kind of take up of that. But also got very choked up several scenes in this. The one about the mom rocking her to sleep, that one as a new parent still, I mean, that got to me big time, thinking, oh my God, there are going to be moments where she's going to grow up and say, I don't need you to do this for me anymore. And I'm sure I'm going to cry when those moments come. And it definitely made both me and Shauna then look at the baby monitor like, oh, there's our baby sleeping.
She still needs you. Don't worry.
Yeah. Like, isn't she so cute? Isn't she so sweet? Ah. So definitely had those moments. I think one thing that also made me laugh was when she tries to do mushrooms again to see her older self and just ends up having that weird hallucination about Justin Bieber and having like the Justin Bieber concert thing going on. And then they cut away to her friend just watching her dancing by herself in the woods and just thinking, oh my God, what a weirdo.
I also love that Ro, her friend, won't let her go by herself. She's like, no, I'm coming with you, like just to watch over, make sure everything's okay. I love that. What a good friend.
Yeah, that's a great friend. And one thing that we also didn't talk about that I really laughed a lot at was, so when Chad shows up in that scene that we keep talking about, he has found an article of clothing of hers that fell on the ground and got some dirt on it, or got, I think he says, oh, it got run over by a car something.
Yeah.
And he's having this long, mostly conversation with himself about the stain and how he's going to try and get the stain out of the outfit. And it's just so funny and so sweet. And he just keeps going on and on about how he's trying to get the stain out. And it just was so funny. And I thought such a great moment of getting to know the character and getting to know the kind of person he is, so that when Aubrey Plaza says loving Chad is a gift and having Chad love you is a gift, that it totally makes sense. It just, you could see the kind of tender-hearted, sweet guy that he is. But then also the scene where he's talking about, you know, when you don't realize your last time that you went out and just played and rode your bike and had fun with your friends, like you didn't realize that was going to be the last time you ever did that. And so that, I think, was another kind of window into the thoughtfulness of his character.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about the last time I was riding my bike and hanging out with my friends. Just kidding.
I was like, I don't even remember.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
I don't think I did, because I don't know. I grew up in an age where I feel like people were not running around the neighborhood as much and riding their bikes around. I feel like when I was,
oh man,
they
missed out.
Missed
out on the wild 80s.
We grew up in the late 80s and early 90s when, you know, parents were like super paranoid about letting their kids go outside, and it was the land of John Walsh and America's Most Wanted and kids, you know, getting kidnapped and stuff like that. It's just like not quite the same.
Definitely not.
You know, run around the neighborhood riding bikes and stuff. But it is sad to think about, when, because you don't appreciate that when you're a kid. You don't think about these things. And then when you get older, you have that kind of longing for the simpler times when you could just go out and play. It didn't have adults' responsibilities and work.
You're making me get all like wistful. Stop it.
Sorry, the movie did it first. Blame
I know,
them.
But I know as a medium parent, because my children are not old, but they're not babies. Henry has some friends here in the neighborhood, and whenever they come over to the house to get him, I'm always just like, not because I'm going to miss him, which I will, but because I'm like, don't do anything like, you know, try to, you know, pour, I don't know, like Sprite on Drano, you know, don't.
Yeah, be safe out there. Don't do anything with fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or chemicals or reactions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was like 12 or 13, we were like, what happens when you like pour soda on like Drano? And so we got an empty 2-liter bottle, filled it with a can of Drano, the kind of like the crystal Drano, and poured some Sprite into it, and it started bubbling so quickly we barely had time to get out of the house. And I remember opening my front door and throwing it out into the yard.
Oh my God, you're insane.
Yeah, Mentos in
kind of like
too.
the Mentos and Coke thing, yeah. Except probably deadly.
Yeah, that is deadly. I was like, at 12, I was either reading by myself or riding my bike. I was not doing chemical concoctions.
Yeah, I'm not sure who talked me into that or if I talked myself into it.
I was like, were you the one who did it?
Maybe. I definitely thought things like that were at least like, oh, we should definitely see what that does.
See what happens. What's going to happen?
It was the 80s.
I'm telling you, the 80s were wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my parents like had a strict curfew, but they didn't really know what I was doing when I left the house until I came back. So,
Oh, yeah, no.
and you could like ride, my friends lived all over the neighborhood, so you could be, a good 15-minute bike ride away from home. And if, curfew's coming up, you're like, oh no, I got to do this bike ride in 13 minutes.
Yeah, I was riding for hours and hours and hours. And like, yeah, no one knew where I was.
Yeah.
This is just making me think of this is an episode of the TV show Bluey where the dad is telling a story about when he was a kid in the 80s. And there are so many moments like in the flashback, he's riding his bike without a helmet. And one of the kids is like, hey, but you're wearing a helmet. He was like, it was the 80s, man. It was a different time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't wear a helmet.
I know.
That's all I can think of now. It was the 80s, man.
Yeah.
I know, and I always hear people say things like, oh, I don't know how I survived my childhood not wearing a bike helmet. It's like, yeah, you just don't happen to know anybody who got a head injury from a bike crash. Trust me, it happened to plenty of people.
Yeah, it did. It did, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, the 90s were like that too. Well, at least part of the 90s, because I was like into the 90s. So anyway. 90s were a bleed over from the 80s. Well, the early 90s.
I'm not saying we like suddenly got really safe or anything.
Yeah. Well, my 90s were actually even more wanton, my early 90s anyway, than my 80s, because I was in France. And
oh, Jesus. Yeah, they were.
by the nature of how you went out with your friends, because I went to an American school, so everybody who went to the school lived in entirely different parts of the surrounding area. So you might be, 40 miles away from home. Like on the other side of Paris, and have to call your parents up and be like, I'm not going to make the last train, so I'm just going to stay at Rob's and hope they're not too mad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's a totally different experience too, like being able to rely on public transit as opposed to like having to rely on your feet or a bike.
Yeah, it's really great. Although if you miss the last train, you're stuck. So unless you want to pay for a very expensive cab ride. So and there are a lot of taxis in Paris, so it is possible.
There are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're not here
I
to
love
talk
how far
about
we've
my
come from
youth.
my old ass.
Yeah. Indeed.
I think it speaks to, not to apologize for the tangent listeners, but I do think it speaks to how effective it is in making you kind of think about your younger self and your younger years and kind of just relive some of those memories, and it conjures those kind of feelings up. Like, what would you tell your younger self? So I think it's good. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I love that because Megan Park said that's how she got the idea for this, was that after she became a mom, like a new mom, she went back home and was like in her childhood bedroom, and she started thinking like, oh, this is so weird. Like, what would I tell myself? And yeah, and it is interesting. Like, what would you tell yourself? But also your mistakes are what make and shape your life. Like, you would be a different person, or not just in different scenarios, but you could arguably be a different person if you don't have those experiences. So it's a fascinating thought experiment.
It is made all the more fun by drugs, hallucinatory drugs.
Oh my God. Both of these movies deal with drugs. It's so interesting.
Yep. It's always funny when that happens in the show. We have all these like hidden themes that we're just not picking up when we pick these movies. And then later we kind of zoom out in conversation on the show and think, wow, these were weirdly thematically related.
Right?
Yeah.
So weird.
Totally accidental, listeners.
Yeah, we'd love to say that
Sometimes
we're
intentional.
planners, but yeah.
I know. We should just lie. No, we're not liars, but we should just lie and be like, we planned it all along.
All right. Did we have anything else we wanted to add about my old ass?
I do not.
I do actually. Just two minor things. One, it was really refreshing that Chad was not a jerk guy.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
Like it
God.
just was really nice. I mean, I know, like, yeah, it just was great. And they had a very sweet, lovely rapport. And just, thinking about her grappling with what this means for her queerness and her identity. It was just, that was also really nice to see. I didn't want to say much about it because I know you guys already had talked about it and talked about that great scene with her friend. But it was really nice. And I love that Rose says to her, she's like, well, you told me that labels, you use them when they're needed or when they're effective for you. And then you don't have to use them if they're not effective for you or they don't work for you anymore. And she's like, take your own advice, listen to your gut. And it was just really nice. Like, you don't have to be so rigid with labels if you don't want to be. You can be fluid with them. And yeah, and that must have been really alarming for her to be like, holy shit, wait a minute. I've always liked girls. I've always liked women. And now I'm liking a guy. Like, what does this mean? And I just think it was done really, really well and really sensitively.
It was. Yeah. It definitely was. That was definitely a great part of the movie. And then it's just reminding me of, it was kind of I don't want to say throwaway line, but it was reminding me that, she was dating that girl that she met in the beginning of the movie at the coffee shop and was feeling kind of unfulfilled by the relationship. And I liked when she was talking to her older self and she said, it's not the first time you got everything you wanted and realized it was not what you wanted. And I thought that was really interesting thing for her to say to her younger self. There are times where, you think you want something else and that's not actually what you really want. So, but and you'll figure that out.
I can think of all of their names off the top of my head too.
Oh boy. I was gonna say, thinking about that conversation, it's so funny that we each had a line that really spoke to us, Evan, because the line that really spoke to me was when younger Elliot was like, well, how do you know you're really in love then? And she's like, well, you don't. And then she's like, well, wait, you have to know. And she's like, well, you'll feel safe and you'll feel freedom. And she's like, I know that doesn't sound romantic to you right now, but trust me, it is. And I'm like, yes, that is the perfect encapsulation. It's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So true. So simple, but so true.
Yeah. There are a few lines in this movie that are really effective. So
yeah,
very well
very
written.
Insightful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that line made me think of somebody who made me feel safe and free. And I was like, yeah, enough of you. Which was a terrible idea. So, oh well. Life goes on.
Obla di obla da.
Yeah. And Desmond stays at home and does his pretty face. Okay.
All right. So let's bring it in for a landing, folks. It sounds like I would recommend Blink Twice, but it does not sound like Megan would recommend Blink Twice.
Sadly, I would not.
No. Not even your mileage may vary. It sounds like
yeah. I mean, your mileage will always vary. So that's kind of my standard. Yeah. But for me, no, I would not recommend it. But yes, your mileage certainly may vary.
And it sounds like we're all very enthusiastic recommendation on My Old Ass.
Oh, yes.
Sure. Why not? I mean,
and
yes.
I was like, that's not true. You love it.
Yeah, and these films are a little bit older than the ones that we typically cover, so they're not in theaters right now, but they are very rentable / watchable. Blink Twice is rentable, and My Old Ass is streaming on Amazon Prime. So easy to check out, listeners. Well, and that brings us to an end of another episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. I want to say a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Clammer. Otto, thank you for making us sound so great week after week.
Thank you, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find us anywhere you get podcasts, but you can also go to our website, spoilerpiece.com. We are on social media. We are at Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram. And are we other places right now?
Letterboxd.
Letterboxd. That's true.
And we're going to be on Blue Sky very soon.
Yeah, I figured everyone's making the mass exodus to Blue Sky. I've noticed the follower counts increasing and more people I know showing up there. So always good to see more people leaving the old Twitter. Anyway, you can, if you want to get in touch with us, you can also email us. We're spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
You can send us a text. You can leave us a voicemail. Let us know what you think of these movies. Let us know what you think of some other movies that we may or may not have talked about. or ask us questions. We're always happy to hear from you. And if you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. That'll take you to your platform of choice. And the ratings and reviews are very much appreciated. It helps build our credibility in the podcast world. And yeah, that's awesome. If you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. As I mentioned at the top of this week's episode, we talked about the 1946 film noir Gilda in this week's exclusive audio. So for $5 a month, you get access to weekly bonus episodes, and you can also vote in our monthly polls, and we're going to have one coming up. So look out for that. If you're a patron, thank you so much for your support. And thank you for just tuning into the show. We really appreciate you listening. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of Your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast, and you can find me on social media as Real Recon. That's real as in film reel. And I'm on Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, and I think that's Letterboxd, and I think that's finally it.
My name is Megan Kearns. I write reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at OpinionS World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Letterboxd, and Threads as Dave Sees Movies.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.